Hello, I'm Rob Sweeney, and I'm the author of You're Not Just a Diagnosis, Using Trauma-Informed Techniques to Create Your Best Life. An important concept to remember about trauma is that it's not just you, the person that you identify yourself as being, that is changed in the experience, but it's also something that your body goes through. Remember when we said earlier that Sigmund Freud divided mental health or our psychology into a sort of subconscious and a conscious, what we choose to do and what we do without thinking. While we still don't have that sort of conscious, subconscious concept of the way the brain works, we do understand that the body experiences what we experience in a way that's a little bit different than what we, the conscious person that makes choices, does. Remember, your brain is an organ inside your skull that doesn't have any direct experience of the world. What it knows is what it's told by your senses. And what it understands is filtered by your emotions, your memories, your experiences, and what it physiologically has to use for filtering. And we'll talk about that in more detail at another time. But brain physiology has a lot to do with how we experience the world, as does the physiology of our eyes, our bodies, our tongue, all of our experiences, our ears, everything. It's all filtered through the body in a way that your brain then has to make sense of. And the experience of going through trauma affects the body as much as it affects the person who inhabits that body. It's not just an experience of who I am. It's an experience of what my body now understands about the world, which is where we get things like reflexes and flashbacks, nightmares. It's the body's remembering what we went through and what that means and what it has to do to help survive in the future. So when we're talking about working with people who've had traumatic experiences and having a trauma-informed environment, it's not just a matter of making things safe, giving them choices, empowering them, being consistent and collaborating with folks, and trustworthy. It's not just those things, although those would make the perfect environment for almost anyone to work. It's also about recognizing those kinds of symptoms or issues that the person may have and may be unaware of because it's just sort of the way things are with me now, and helping them deal with that. The treatment for trauma involves not just the mental health side, the redefining who we are, understanding the world, redefining how we fit in the world. It's also dealing with those physical symptoms. Imagine if you were in an environment where you were struck at the back of the head all the time. Physically, what would happen? You're getting struck in the back of the head all the time. Physically, the muscles in the back of the neck would either strengthen to hold the head up, to keep drawing it back up so you could see things, because you're getting hit in the back of the head. Up here would probably become numb, and the hair would probably fall out, right? Because you keep getting hit in the head. Your eyes would have difficulty focusing on a thing and would become used to doing this sort of thing to stay focused, right? Because you keep getting hit in the back of the head. All of that stuff will then demonstrate when the person is away from the environment where they keep getting hit on the back of the head all the time. So I'm not being hit in the back of the head, but I still kind of flinch whenever I hear the sound that comes with that moment just before I get struck, right? So I do this kind of, I flinch. And that's an involuntary reflex that the body's making me go through. So part of the treatment for trauma is to look for those reflexes and look for the triggers, like I mentioned, a sound before you get hit. If you can find those triggers that are associated with those reflexes, then you start to help the body train itself to manage when that sound or that trigger happens without having that reflex get in the way and impairing the person's life. So trauma-informed treatment involves both a mental health aspect, where we're helping the person redefine who they are, understand their world, make the world a safer place, become empowered, collaborate with people, be trustworthy and find trustworthy individuals they can make part of their lives. It's also a matter of helping them deal with the physical symptoms of trauma. Things like fibromyalgia, that constant aching pain that doesn't respond to medication, dealing with weird kinds of aches and pains in the body, heart disease, intestinal problems, difficulty walking. There's all kinds of physical symptoms that can be manifested when a person has had severe trauma. The last thing to remember about trauma and trauma-informed care is that while we define post-traumatic stress disorder as a disorder that manifests itself after a single or a few very clear, identifiable moments when the person has had a severe trauma, and that is now past. That's why we come up with post-traumatic stress. Trauma can also be a cumulative effect. If you think of being pecked to death by ducks, right? They keep coming after you and pecking. After a million pecks, you die because you got pecked to death by ducks. Trauma can also be that long-term experience, that long exposure to terrible things over and over and over that eventually create the same kinds of effects as that one huge dramatic thing that we can point to and say, well, that person has PTSD. Not everybody with a traumatic experience or a series of traumatic experiences has post-traumatic stress disorder. But post-traumatic stress disorder is a trauma experience or a diagnosis of a person who's had trauma and is part of a whole range of traumatic experiences and diagnoses that are related, that has all that one concept in mind, that one thing in common, that redefining who we are and that effect on the body. My last point about trauma-informed care and trauma-informed concepts in general is to keep in mind that, again, just like any other diagnosis, this doesn't define the person. This is not who you are. You are not the traumatized person. You're a person who's had traumatic experience. And so I don't want you to think of any kind of trauma-informed treatment as defining who you are in a way that is all-encompassing. Even though PTSD is a way of describing the experience of redefining how you fit in the world, that doesn't mean you're a particular kind of person who is all PTSD. It means that you may not believe the same things about yourself that other people believe about you, but you're still the good person you could have been, the good person you intend to be, and the strong, capable person that is going to create the best life you can with everything that you have, using all the experiences and all the tools that you will have in the future as well as those in the past. You are not just your diagnosis. Your diagnosis is just a way to treat something that bothers you.